Awesome. Okay. Really sorry about that, guys. That took way longer than I anticipated. So why don't, this is our first meeting as a team, for people to get familiar with this project. One of the first things I'd like to go through is kind of what the project is about. But before we do that, even though we've kind of already gone through some light introductions over Slack, why don't we go ahead and circle around the room and everyone introduce themselves. I can go ahead and start, make it a little bit easier for everybody. So my name is David. I graduated from ASU last year in software engineering. I'm currently working for Starbucks as a security engineer. Prior to that, I interned with them as well. And before that, I did something like 13 years in retail, making espresso, Americanos, and lattes. My favorite cup of coffee is usually iced coffee with a couple of shots of espresso. I drink it at all hours, as you can see. Outside of that, I like coding, I like security. I really like working with people and getting to know people. That's why I was working for Starbucks in retail as long as I did. And I love my family. So anywho, really look forward to getting to know all of you. And since Cade, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, since your camera's on, let's actually go ahead and go with you next.
Absolutely, and you got the name perfectly right. My name is Cade Korn. It's a fun name. I am a data analytics major here at ASU. I have been taking a lot of tech camps, web development here with ASU, and also doing the Odin project and free code camp. I used to be a finance major. I switched over because I realized I really liked development after helping develop a trading algorithm for one of my hedge funds I was working at. And I realized that finance people are kind of like scummy people, and everyone in the tech field is better, at least better for humanity, I'd say. I also am a Starbucks partner, and I'm actually interning with them for their data engineering team in Seattle this summer. So there is me.
Awesome. Glad to hear it, and congrats on the new role. Those are pretty competitive. So maybe we can connect and do a quick connect over coffee or something like that in the summer when you start. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and go around just in line from what I see on the screen. So Sid, would you mind introducing yourself? Or Seed? I don't know how that's pronounced.
Yeah, Sid. Sid is right. I'm Sid. I'm a freshman. I'm majoring in computer science. And yeah, I'm kind of excited about the project. I have no prior experience, so I'm just trying to get into it. And I just got a cybersecurity externship by Greater Phoenix Chambers. So just really looking forward to that one.
Right on. Very cool. We definitely welcome anyone, people with different levels of skill sets. So the only way through is, to do it. So that's awesome. Welcome aboard. Rhett, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Rhett. I am the CodeDevils Vice President for this year. I have no clue what year I am at school. Like somewhere sophomore, junior. I've been in college. I think this is my 6th year. I do a lot of the website development here at CodeDevils, and currently I'm a software developer here in California. I work for a company called Axelon, and we are like a software contracting company, and I just work with a lot of Java on the back end, Spring Boot, and Angular on the front end. Currently, I'm kind of getting into some machine learning stuff for fun, though.
Right on. Very cool. Glad to have you here. Tyler, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm a freshman CS student. Let's see. I'm mostly familiar with Kubernetes and Docker. I run a Kubernetes cluster in my house, and it's all GitOps based, so it's up and on GitHub and all that, and some fun CI pipelines. It's but yeah, like I'm mostly familiar with the technology, so I just want to do more with it. That's my goal here.
Right on. Very cool. Glad to have you here. Why don't Lee? Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hey, I'm Lee. I'm a second-year junior majoring in software engineering, and I'm currently based out of Virginia. I work at a local company as a software engineer. I have a decent amount of experience in Linux, mostly Red Hat-based distributions and Debian-based. I also know some Python, Java, and some C from 334 now. I do not have any experience with Kubernetes or any of that yet, but I'm looking forward to working with it.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. And Junior, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Do you feel comfortable introducing yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Junior. I'm originally from Peru. I'm currently living in New York City. Trying to get some certificates from Coursera. I learned about SAU programs, and now I'm an SAU student. So I have some experience on C, C++, Java, Python, some of those courses, but I never had the chance to work in a real or in a big project like this. I'm really excited to take part of and help you out.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Thank you for that. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Steven. I transferred to ASU. It's been, I guess, a couple of years now. It feels like time's flown by with the quarantine. I'm probably somewhere around software junior. I have most of my credits finished except for software engineering, and I'm just getting started in some of the software classes. I've been doing software development, networking, DevOps across Azure, AWS, and local VMware environments for quite a few years. So checking out this project. My time's somewhat limited. I've just picked up some more work and some more projects. So I'll see if there's anything I can help out with and learn more about the project. So.
Right on. Very happy to have you here. Kanav?
Hi
Sorry if I
everyone.
mispronounced that.
Yeah, that's correct. It's Kanav. Hello everyone. I am a graduate student in ASU. I am pursuing my master's in software engineering. Before joining the master's in software engineering, I have an industry experience of 6 years. So I worked across multiple projects for General Electrics in Java, Spring Boot. So I have 6 years of experience on that. So I call myself a backend engineer. Recently, I started indulging myself into AWS space, and recently got my first certifications of AWS Developer Associate, and looking for more. Thank you for having me on the team.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anyone. I think that's everybody. Awesome. Really excited to have you guys here and interested in the project. Most of you, I assume, have seen at least a little bit about what this project is about, whether that was reading a summary or hearing an introduction about it in our last general body meeting. But in general, it would probably be good to just revisit what we're trying to do, what the problem space is, and kind of where we currently sit with planning, so we have a clear view for how we can move forward. So the project came about because me and my wife really like to game together. Our time has gone down, and so we've opted for games like MineCraft, where we can explore either creative siting, our creative interests through more complex builds, or I personally really like to get into the redstone. It feeds into a lot of that logic that is behind what we do with software engineering. There's some pretty cool stuff you can do with redstone. We did a lot with this, and for various reasons, we ended up most recently working with Bedrock Edition. Microsoft actually offers an alpha version of a Linux server for Bedrock Edition, which is great. It's really cool. You don't have to, take the Pocket Edition and tweak it and kind of like force a square peg into a round hole kind of a thing. But over time, if you're actually spending time in that world, maintaining it is really kind of a pain in the butt. Things like managing backups, things like consistently upgrading the version of the server. And unfortunately with Bedrock, you can't pin a version because the clients will automatically update. And then even a very, very small minor version causes the connection to break. It is what it is. So I wanted to do MineCraft Bedrock Edition a better way. And you can kind of manage this in easier, dirtier ways. You can write bash scripts to take care of a lot of this stuff. It doesn't really scale when the interface changes and stuff like that. And it's somewhat fragile, but you can do that. Instead, I wanted to take a microservices approach to managing Minecraft Bedrock services. So this concept where you want to be able to press a button or have it automatically upgrade the version of the server. You want it to consistently make backups. So if there's power loss, right, your world doesn't get corrupted. This is actually a problem if you're hosting it on, say, like a PS4. You have a brownout, your PS4 goes off. You just lost your entire world. Yes, Java Edition isn't much better, but because of how long it's been around, there are a number of existing like open source projects that solve a lot of this. But I like Bedrock Edition because you can play it on your phone, you can play it on Switch, you can play it on Xbox, you can play it on PS4. It's cross-platform compatible. It's not bleeding edge competitive gaming, but it's fun and you can play with your friends regardless of what system they're using. So, anywho, so a lot of this is built around doing smaller things in what are called like microservices, a backup job, an upgrade job, wrapping essentially like an RPC-ish RESTful API around it so you can interact with configuring the server better. And so individually, that's fine. You can have one single world with a number of different containers. You could even pretty it up and use like Docker Compose on a virtual machine. So you've got your one world with your good management. Kubernetes comes into play because maybe you want to have 2 worlds or 3. And unfortunately, you can't run multiple worlds from the same server. So Kubernetes allows you to take that structure that you're doing with all of those, quality of life improvements as running containers and scale it horizontally. So now you have multiple different worlds that you can manage. And because Kubernetes has an API, you can slap a UI on top of that. And now you can have administrators press buttons, create new worlds, revert worlds to existing backups. There's lots of different ways you can handle where that information is stored, whether that's locally on something that you're self-hosting or in blob storage in the cloud. Plenty of different options there. But essentially, it's kind of like managing Minecraft really stinks in its current state. So why don't we do it better with Kubernetes and some good workflows where any changes that we need to make can be done as code. And so that kind of addresses another issue where you want a stable system that isn't complex to deploy and isn't fragile. Any changes that you want to make can go through a process, and that kicks off the pipeline that deploys your new version of what you're trying to do. So a lot of different moving parts. Containers, obviously security is an important part of that, right? Because all of this is internet facing. Scanning the containers that are going to go into Kubernetes is important. Evaluating the configuration for either the Kubernetes manifest or the Helm charts, whatever we do end up deciding to do. And that's important. And it's just having a good workflow for that. So again, a lot of different stuff. I'm not trying to overwhelm anyone, especially for those of you who are less experienced and are still learning, which is totally fine. Because we want to do microservices, each one of the pieces of the puzzle is relatively small. And it's not language dependent, right? So someone could write a small microservice in Java, another one could be in Go, another one could be in Python, etc. So that leads into why microservices versus monoliths. Kind of talked about this a little bit. Bash scripts are kind of, they work, and you could expand them to do mostly what you want to do, but if anything changes, it breaks, and that's really fragile. Also, a lot of teams out there build systems using microservices. Kubernetes is really popular. Being able to work with Docker and containers is really popular. You know, CI/CD and deploying your stuff as code, like all of that is industry standard, isn't super covered by the curriculum, and is a great opportunity to deal with things that is actually used in the job. For those of you already in position, it's kind of an opportunity to play with stuff that you don't have as many guardrails around, because it's on your own time, right? Like you don't have to follow anyone's orders, kind of a thing. Right. And then lastly, I already kind of touched on this. Which languages we want to use really is kind of up to the individual contributor for a particular part of the project that they're working on. That being said, two languages that I'm personally fond of and have some prototype code already set up when I was looking into this a while back, Go and Python. Go is really great just because of the fact that it naturally works well with, it's got channels and you can do things asynchronously, and the language makes it really, really simple to do that. And that's important when considering how to wrap the server and then put an API in front of it. So anyway, again, not trying to get into the weeds, but I like Go and I like Python for those reasons. But there's nothing stopping anyone from writing something in C or Java, or please not VBA, but that's not necessarily off the table. Does anybody have any questions? I tried to cover things at a high level, but I'm sure I missed things as well. Okay. Awesome. Okay, did you have a question? I just saw that your camera came on.
Yeah, I was going to say something. So you said that there's different types of roles that we could do for this. You had 2 prototype spots already with Go and Python. What other roles would we be working to like help out like within the project, if that makes sense?
Sorry, when you say roles, do you mean like backend versus DevOps versus front end, or do you mean like specific languages?
Exactly that.
Yeah, so I mean like it's the project itself is fairly full stack. You've got backend pieces for the individual microservices and the containers that are running in a node and Kubernetes. You've got the DevOps engineering component for essentially like the build pipeline, and then deploying it, doing checks and stuff like that, tests, things of that nature. There's a cloud engineering component most likely because a lot of teams like to put stuff in the cloud, and that means you don't have to roll your own like hosted infrastructure. So there's an opportunity to go with some different tools in the cloud and architect that a little bit better. And then there's a front end component, right? So it'd be really, really great if we're not talking about the end result being a collection of like scripts that you can run, but instead it's a like a UI that uses federated login, and you can actually log into it, see the worlds that are currently running, see some information about it, maybe some metrics that are being pulled from whatever. There's lots of different ways to do that, and then manage it visually. And so there's, what framework or lack of a framework we use for a UI is entirely up to the team and the folks that want to contribute to it, right? If people want to use React, great. If people want to use vanilla.js, I commend you for the amount of work that you're willing to do, but that's also not off the table. So there's a lot of different roles that goes into it. There is also the potential for machine learning, potentially, simply because of the fact that so botting characters is actually a really cool problem. How you can be able to like path your character through the world is more difficult than you might think. In some anarchy servers, this is explored a little bit more, where there are bots that essentially like go and try and like kill people and stuff like that, or do mass desecration of the spawn area. But there are some folks who have worked on like good machine learning based pathing to basically escape like a death trap in the spawn area for joining an anarchy world. 2B2T had some interesting projects around this. But if that's something that someone wanted to try, it's also an option as well. Now that's a little bit of scope creep. I certainly wouldn't put that as like a hard acceptance criteria, but if that's something that someone wants to work on, and we have a lot of flexibility as far as roles. That's the short answer. Does that answer your question, or?
Absolutely, David. Thank you so much. I appreciate you going very in depth.
Yes. Awesome. Cool. Did anyone else have any questions? I don't want to hold up everyone's time, but okay. If you have any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or interrupt me later. We'll probably have some time at the end where we can talk about that as well. So for those that are still interested in continuing with this, one of the next big decisions that we need to make is what type of project management tooling we use. There's a number of different options. Jira comes to mind as a prime option for a number of different reasons, but it's widely used in industry, and you'll get different answers depending on who you talk to, but it can be widely used in industry. It's got a lot of good options as far as representing the work in terms of ethics and stories and assigning points. There's a fairly good API around it, so we can get better reporting out of those boards if we want to do that as well. And it's just got good existing out of the box integrations, whether that's with GitHub, Slack, or other things. Free Jira is limited to 5 seats. However, this is an open source project, right? We're looking at a permissive open source license, MIT, and so we can get an open source project license for Jira, where we're not limited by the number of contributors in the project. If folks are interested in that, we can definitely go down that route. I personally would advocate for that. GitHub also has basic Kanban boards. That's an option, and we're probably already going to be using GitHub because that's the version control system that CodeDevils uses for projects. And then Taiga, for those of you that took 316, that's the project management tool that's used in the course. It is free and open source, and we could potentially use that as well. However, if anyone has other tools that they really, really like and would prefer, I'm certainly not opposed to more discussion around that. Does anyone have opinions about, you know, Jira boards or Kanban boards or that kind of tooling? I agree with Lee. Jira is a lot nicer than Taiga, though I will say that the reporting for Jira for velocity, so like across multiple sprints, fantastic. Reporting for an individual sprint is absolute garbage because people will create tasks for a story, and it will be like people will have, you know, they'll be working on tasks, closing them like they're supposed to, and you just see these cliff-based things on the chart as opposed to like a nice progressive curve that like more accurately represents the amount of work that's being done. There's ways around that. We can build our own reporting if we want to. I'm not even sure that we need to care about that reporting, but right on. So I've seen 3 folks who have agreed with Jira. Is there anyone who's opposed to Jira? Come on. Right on. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you expressing an opposing viewpoint. Okay, so projects. We don't necessarily have to decide right now. We can definitely like throw a poll into Slack. Trello is definitely simpler. I would agree with that. Okay. Yep. Ironically, Trello is also, sorry, I don't know if anyone's reading chat. So I was just responding to comments through chat. Trello is an alternative to Jira. It's a little bit more streamlined. There's less stuff, so it's less cluttered. It ironically is also owned by Atlassian now, so same company as Jira. I'm not sure what we would need to do as far as licensing with that, but I would imagine we could probably work around that. Tyler, you said that you thought it had a user limit. You thought Jira had a user limit or Trello? I don't know. We can certainly we can certainly investigate that more. So it sounds like no one likes Taiga. That's fine. That's totally fine. So we're looking at Jira, GitHub, and Trello as contenders. Feel free to do a little bit more research on your own time. We can throw a poll into the Slack channel and figure it out there. Whatever tool we use, we probably should choose that relatively soon, so that way we can track and plan the work that we need as we get going with this project. Definitely appreciate the feedback. I don't want to be the one deciding which tool we use, because honestly, like, it's got to work for you. So I'm not trying to dictate anything to anyone. Any other feedback or thoughts around project management tools? Please don't say Excel. All right. Okay. So next on the list, I edited the agenda to include project name brainstorming. So as accurate as Minecraft as a service is, it's really boring. We can leave it like that if we want to, but I wanted some feedback on good naming ideas. Personally, I think the hardest part of programming is naming. Like, you don't want data one, and good variable names just takes forever. And a lot of us are pretty bad at it, myself particularly included in that. But in the interest of throwing some stuff out there, yes, Ubuntu. Oh, interesting. Math is already taken. Yeah, that makes sense. So the two project names I thought of were Simply Bedrock or MineCube. I don't know if those are already taken or not. But does anyone have any thoughts? I'm actually going to see if MineCube shows up in Google. Ah, boo. Is 30 seconds. Yeah, CubeCraft. That could work as well. Someone does already have a CubeCraft project, but I mean, it's probably not trademarked. So, and again, we don't have to decide today. I do think it would be nice to, yeah. Mine, okay. So it's misspelled. I'm just curious. Not a whole lot on Google, so that's probably a safe one to go with. Rhett suggestion of MineCube with cubes and spelled with a Q. Actually looks like a good option if folks are interested in it. But what about what's the other one, Alex? No, I like it. You know, Minecraft Steve. So that's definitely an option as well. And I don't want to put people on the spot. We definitely don't have to make a decision tonight. We can probably table that as something that we come back with and pull in Slack. I am going to add some of these to the list. So we have another one. Okay. So it sounds like there was zero interest in simply Bedrock. That's totally fine. MineCube, SteveCube, CubeCraft, and MineCube. But if we want to suggest other names, totally down for that as well. And so I'll go ahead and throw a poll into Slack and we can make a decision there. Does anyone have any other hats to throw into the ring, so to speak? Like the mayonnaise, probably just around me. Oh, QB is apparently a more powerful alternative to Cube CCX and Cubans. Man, but that's fine. I'm still gonna leave it on the list. Just food for thought. Okay. Yeah, that's true. It is a different context. And we could look at alternative spellings as well if we really wanted to go that route. Awesome. So just to wrap up, so we talked about kind of what the project was about. We talked about the project management options that we have. We talked about the project name, and that of course goes into like registering one of these tools, right? There's going to be an FTDN or domain basically for the project, and we want that to match up with the name of the project that we choose, especially because it's probably going to be visible, and some folks might actually want to like point to it. We might even want to link to it from the CodeDevils website as well. There's different reasons why we want to do that, but and why contributors would probably want that as well. So the last thing I had on the agenda was pretty much like parking lot items or like anything that came up that we didn't really talk about previously, or questions that folks had, issues that folks wanted to bring up that hadn't already been addressed, things like that. So kind of an open floor in a way. Anyone have anything that they want to bring up or talk through? Okay, there's one. There is one thing that I'll go ahead and bring up as well. And so when Brandon was pitching the project ideas previously and getting folks involved, getting alumni involved to kind of like push projects forward and that kind of stuff, one of the main focuses was around employability. Some of us don't have to worry about that, but when I was going through it, I just remember like, it seems like you would go through LinkedIn, you would apply to places, your resume would go straight into somebody's shredder, and this would happen 100 times before you so much as got an email with an invitation to interview. Not a job offer, a chance to interview. And so one of the things that we'd like to push with this is kind of like marketability of participation in the project. And part of that can potentially be interviews. I don't want to gate anyone who's willing to participate in the project, right? Like if you have almost no experience, but you want to pair up with someone to see what like development looks like, great, that's fantastic. We can learn together. That's cool. But I do think that there's value in kind of taking the time to walk through why are you interested in this? Why are you here? Why Devils? Why Minecraft? Why DevOps over React library building, right? And maybe some technical questions as well, depending on what someone's interests were. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest benefits there would be interview practice and the ability to say like, yes, my participation in this was like I interviewed for this, and you can spend it almost like an internship. I'm not saying I'm trying to control people's time. No one's getting paid. It's definitely open source software. But if folks are interested, I think there's a lot of value to be had in going through the interview process. So just throwing that out there. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I'll say something.
Sure.
Just bouncing off of what you said, here at CodeDevils, we want you guys to get the most out of your time here while you're in our program and you're in our software engineering program and at ASU in general. So going through this and trying and like making the most out of your time here is going to be really valuable, not only to your future career, but even like trying to get to that career in the first place. And that's really why we're trying to get these projects going for you guys.
Personally, I'm very thankful that there's opportunities like this out here. It's hard, like there's a bunch of different developer clubs at ASU, Google Developer Club, but so many of them don't actually have anything going. It's just kind of a black hole. Something I noticed about CodeDevils is you guys are actually pushing towards things, and it makes me really want to be a part of it more. And actually, like you said, Rhett, be able to put time into it and actually get a lot of value out of it.
Awesome, thanks for that. It's a quiet bunch today. I shouldn't be surprised. We're all, software engineers or computer scientists, just techies, and so we might not necessarily talk as much as other folks. That's fine.
David, it's because we haven't had our coffee like you at what, 9, almost 10 p.m.
It's almost 11 my time. Man. But yeah, I definitely don't want to beat a dead horse. But essentially, I wanted to throw that out there, and I wanted to make myself available for doing one-on-one interviews. I do think the preparatory process that you go through to prepare for an interview is almost more valuable than the time in the interview, and that's only and second to that is the feedback that you get from the interview afterwards. There's a lot of tooling that's available through career services and stuff like that to try and help you. You can kind of like do mock interviews with yourself where you record yourself answering questions, and you can review it afterwards to tune the kinds of answers that you provide. But at the end of the day, most of these interviews are about like creating personal connections and being able to do things live with someone that you have a vested interest in connecting with. I will say that when I interviewed with Starbucks, I was not prepared for the level of stress involved in like screen sharing while doing not super complex like coding challenges. Like they were hard, but they weren't like super hard. But the challenging part was there was someone who was literally watching me like backspace and type stuff in, and that killed me. So anyway, I just wanted to make myself available.
David, I appreciate that, because I wanted to say my first technical interview experience was with Starbucks for software engineering, and I looked up the lady before on LinkedIn, and she was a computer science genius from China. It was so brutal having that experience. Just like typing everything, I completely messed up, clammed up. So I get what you're saying on that.
Yep. Totally thought I lost it. And then they called me and made the offer. But anyway, so it's good. Cool. I didn't want to beat a dead horse, but just wanted to throw that out there. Did anyone have any other things or concerns or questions or action items to bring forward?
I just had a quick question. The scope of the project, right? It's pretty encompassing. So when did you expect to have it in a usable state, not necessarily completed? Because it's never going to be complete. As all projects go.
Sure. So that's a great question. And I have some thoughts around that, but I really think that we as a team should also have some input on that as well. We all have busy lives, and there's varying degrees of time that we'll have available to contribute to the project. And what's reasonable for some people is not reasonable for others. Personally, I think that we really should get to the point where there's at least a UI that might not be fully featured that can integrate with the other pieces and provides secure login for that UI. How complex that is entirely up to us. But I really do think that like having user interface is pretty crucial to having even like an MVP kind of deliverable at the end of this. How long we take working on the project is also debatable. I really think time boxing it is important and generates a sense of urgency and helps people stay focused. But I also don't think that people are going to necessarily want to work on this for a year straight. So that's a great question. And I think narrowing the scope and defining our definition of done is probably going to be one of the first things that we do. So there's some planning work that we'll probably want to start off with once we've got our project management tooling set up. Those will probably be the first stories. I have some drafts for project scope and project definition documents, but I'd love some input on that as well. And I can share links to those for folks that want to contribute in Slack if people want to do that as well. Does that answer your question or?
Yeah, that does.
Right on. Cool. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. We took the entire hour, almost the entire hour. I wasn't sure if we were going to do that or not, but hopefully this has been helpful for folks. Hopefully this has answered people's questions around the project. For those who are newer in software engineering and development, not necessarily software engineering, but with development, feel free to ping me if you'd like recommendations on resources to learn things, or take your own approach if you want to as well. I'm not trying to shove things down people's throats, but yeah. I know one of the biggest things can be like, well, I don't know how to write something in Python, so like, how do I learn how to? Anyway, we can chat about that more if you think that resources would help you and you think that's a blocker for initially being able to contribute. I don't think it is, but so beyond that, we're going to have polls in Slack around the name. We're going to have polls in Slack around the tooling that we use to manage the projects. And I'm going to make myself open to set up one-on-one interviews. I'd strongly encourage you to take advantage of that, not because I'm a great interviewer, but because of the fact that I think it's a good opportunity to connect and to go through the process, at least preparing for interviews that you really care about. So, cool. No one has anything else? I really appreciate your time and look forward to hopefully working with all of you over the next few months. So thank you.
Great meeting you, David, and everyone else.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. I'm
Awesome.
going to stop the recording right now.